WorkSafe Tasmania, and I'll be your moderator. In recognition of the deep history and culture of this island, we acknowledge Tasmanian Aboriginal people, the original and continuing custodians of the land, sea and sky. We acknowledge and pay our respects to all Tasmanian Aboriginal people, all of whom have survived invasion and dispossession and continue to maintain their identity, culture and Aboriginal rights. Please take a moment to read the following slide about information received today. Please use the chat tab on your screen to type and submit questions for today's presenter. Those questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. Only presenter webcams will be used, and we're now also sharing with you a handout. So please head to your handouts tab to now download a presentation as well. And today's webinar is also being recorded. It is now my pleasure to introduce your presenter today from Crossroads Civil Contracting, Stewart Cameron. Stewart is Safety Manager for Crossroads Civil Contracting. He has experience in practical safety management in the mining and construction industries. In his current role, Stewart promotes best practice in safety management in the construction industry, and we welcome Stewart today.
Thank you, Steph. So, yes, Stewart Cameron, Safety Manager for Crossroads Civil. I'm going today run through an incident case study in relation to an incident that happened on one of our civil construction sites in northern Tasmania. So, bit of background on Crossroads Civil. Its family-owned business was founded in 1995 in northern Tasmania in Launceston. So for the last 29 years, Crossroads Civil has grown in the civil construction space, working on roadworks, earth moving, drainage works, has developed in asphalt and curb and gutter. Crossroads currently sits at around 50 employees, and they're made up of civil construction workers, support staff and leadership. So on October the 3rd, 2019, a team of 3 workers were working on a urban subdivision in northern Tasmania on the western side of the Tamar River up at Lagana. So the work and the project was for that urban subdivision was to install pipes and drainage. An incident occurred on that project when a delivery of pipes arrived on site, and during that unloading of those pipes, the pipes collapsed off the back of the semi-truck that was delivering them, causing serious injuries to one of the workers. We've developed an animation for the incident, which we'll play now.
In October 2019, a ground pipe works for a northern Tasmanian urban subdivision project. The work crew consisted of 2 excavator operators and the site supervisor. This work was recognised as high-risk construction as it involved work in an area with movement of powered mobile plant. Prior to the works commencing, the civil construction company's operations manager placed an order with a supplier to provide HDPE Black Max pipes to the project. The operations manager specified with the supplier that he did not want all of the pipes delivered to site at once and would order as required. Responsibility for managing on-site deliveries was then delegated to the site supervisor. The site supervisor and the supplier representative subsequently changed the agreed process, deciding for the pipes to be delivered directly to site in 2 loads over 2 consecutive weeks, so that there were enough pipes on site for 1 month's work. On the day of the incident, the work crew had not completed a formal daily pre-work meeting. A job safe work method statement had been developed but was not at the site. At around 10 a.m, the first load of HDPE pipes originating from New South Wales arrived on a subcontractor haulage company truck and trailer combination. The load had not arrived as the work crew expected due to being separated into 2 loads prior to shipping on a ferry. This delivery was 4.5 metres high with no pre-installed slings. Rather than pausing to assess the situation, the truck was allowed to move on to the unloading point. The truck driver then exited the vehicle and started to release the restraints. At this point, the load of pipes became insecure, with no controls in place to prevent the pipes from falling. The excavator operator was outside the line of fire and sustained no injuries. The truck driver, who was crouched down closest to the truck, sustained minor injuries from being pinned between the pipe and the truck. The site supervisor could not move away in time and was crushed by falling pipes, sustaining a fractured vertebrae. The original plan for delivery of the pipes by the civil construction company was to deliver the pipes as needed in smaller loads. This plan was changed. The person or entity responsible for originally loading the trailer did not eliminate or adequately minimise the risk of sideways movement of the pipes during transport or unloading. Under the Load Restraint Guide 2018, this could have included installation of stanchions or scalloped dunnage. The front bump pipes were stacked excessively high and in a potentially unstable configuration, increasing the risks around working at height during slinging of the load and uncontrolled movement during the unloading process. The work crew recognised the load was stacked high and was concerned about how it would be unloaded, but did not stop the job or send the truck away. The work crew noticed the truck driver removing the lower straps that were securing the lower pipes on the front bunk and failed to stop the job. Instead, assistance was provided to the truck driver. This has resulted in workers being in the line of fire once the load was no longer secured. As there was no formally documented pre-start meeting conducted on the morning of the incident, there was no agreed plan discussed by the work crew on the safe removal of the pipes. A documented safe work method statement was not on site on the day of the incident. No statement was signed by workers on the day or had risk controls for the unloading of pipes from a truck. Prior to undertaking a task or when a change to a task occurs, it is important to identify hazards, assess risk and consequences, and implement suitable risk controls. Methods of achieving this can include implementation of a safe work method statement in consultation with the workers prior to works commencing, an on-site review of the safe work method statement when new hazards are identified or when there is a change in process or tasks, conducting a daily pre-work review of the tasks for the day and the foreseen hazards that need to be controlled. Be willing to stop a job from continuing when resources are insufficient to control hazards. Have an agreed process between the client, seller and transport contractors for the delivery of products to a worksite that considers the resources available to safely unload the product at the intended delivery location.
I'll run through some more detail now on the incident. So the site works for the incident, there were 2 excavator operators on site and a site supervisor. The site wasn't yet fully established and they were in preparation for the pipe laying activities. So the site was lacking access and facilities. So the work that was being undertaken was to complete these in preparation for the groundworks. Leading up to the incident, the Crossroads operation manager, when he placed the order of pipes with a local supplier, knowing that the pipes were coming from New South Wales, was very clear with the pipe supplier that those pipes were to go, when they arrived in Tassie, they were to go to the pipe supplier's yard and they were to be delivered to the project site in small loads, and the pipe supplier was to deliver them using his truck asset, which was fitted with a high-ab truck. And this is how that supplier had previously delivered pipes to project sites for Crossroads. The ops manager, 2 weeks prior to the start of the project, delegated authority to the site supervisor. So the site supervisor was responsible for the site setup, the working with the supplier on the delivery of the pipes. When the pipes were manufactured in New South Wales, they were loaded onto trucks for delivery. The person loading the trucks failed to place stanchions on the truck to prevent sideways movement, and there was no scallop dunnage on the truck. The pipes that were on the truck range from 575mm pipes to 450mm pipes, and within those pipes they were sleeved with 375mm pipes and secured with poly strapping, the blue poly strapping. Both the front and rear bunks and stacks of pipes on the truck were over 4.5 metres high, and both the front and the rear, pardon me, both the front and the rear piles on that truck were over the head and tail boards. So that was not compliant with the load restraint guides. The truck and trailer left New South Wales, arrived in Melbourne to be loaded to come to Tasmania. There was some ferry restrictions. So the original truck that the supervisor had rearranged delivery, which was a smaller load, was left in Melbourne, and the larger truck was left to arrive on site. Prior to the arrival, a week prior to the arrival of the pipes on site, there was a discussion between the supervisor on site and the pipe supplier on increasing the number of pipes being delivered to site, which had previously been arranged for smaller loads. On the day of the incident, around 10 a.m, a fine day in Northern Lonnie, the truck arrived to site. It was escorted to an open area on the compound on unbroken level ground. And when that truck arrived immediately to site, there was discussion between the three workers on site with concerns around that the amount of pipes on the truck, and concern raised about how they were going to unload the truck. The excavator, one of the excavator operators, was tasked by the supervisor to find some slings on site to assist with the unloading of the pipes and to organise an excavator to facilitate that unloading. So despite the concerns raised by the site team and the discussion that they had, the supervisor commenced to unsecure the load of pipes in a rush, and the site team assisted him with that. There was commentary around the supervisor, the truck driver, being away from home for a period of time on the mainland and just wanting to get home. So there was a pressure. So the driver started to release with the supervisor on the offside of the truck the top restraints for the load of pipes, and then the supervisor returned to the offside of the truck with one of the other excavator operator and assisted with rolling up the straps to go into the truck, unaware that the truck driver was releasing all the restraints on the rest of the load. At approximately 10:30 a.m, the load of unrestrained load of pipes on the side of the truck collapsed, landing on the supervisor, pinning him face down under two packs of 140 kilo poly pipes. The truck driver was pinned against the side of the tray by another pack of pipes. So first response, immediately they released the driver who was pinned against the truck. They removed the pipes from the supervisor and undertook a quick assessment. An ambulance was called to the site. There was an internal escalation within the Crossroads business. WorkSafe was notified of the incident by senior management, and WorkSafe was also notified of the incident by Tas Ambulance Service. The ambulance and Tas Police arrived on site approximately 20 minutes post-incident. The truck driver was assessed quickly, and then the supervisor was assessed by the Tas Ambulance Service and transferred to Launceston Hospital. The scene was secured by the site team, and WorkSafe attended site. So, investigation and findings. So these are some pictures on the day post-incident after the front bunk tray of pipes had collapsed. Straight away, an independent investigation team was assembled, had the Crossroads operations manager, and we also had independent support for Crossroads come in to assist in the investigation. So the contributing factors around the pipe collapse, there was a change in the scheduled delivery quantities between the supervisor and the pipe supplier. The person delivering the pipes or arranging for the delivery and loading the pipes didn't adequately eliminate or minimize the risk of sideways movement of the pipes. And that, as I mentioned before, was around the use of stanchions or scallop dunnage, as is listed in the load restraint guide. And also that the pipes that were sleeved within the pipes also contributed to an unstable load. The load was stacked excessively high, as mentioned before, 4.5 metres. Access to that truck for unloading of pipes was a hazard for the site team. The site supervisor and the team recognised as soon as that truck arrived on site that it was excessively high, but they didn't stop the job, they didn't turn the truck away, and they didn't adequately risk assess. So there was no formally documented process around how those pipes were going to be safely unloaded, and no assessment of adequate equipment on site to unload the pipes. There was a SWIMS that was developed for the job. It wasn't on site. It hadn't been reviewed by workers and hadn't been signed by the workers either. There was no pre-start meeting on the day of the incident. So there was no opportunity to talk about the delivery of the pipes amongst the team, and it was just arrived on site. So there was no point where the team could plan on that activity for the day. And as I said, there was no formal process, no documented process, nothing formal around the unloading process to mitigate the risks of unloading that pipe. So WorkSafe Tasmania arrived on site to conduct their initial investigations. It was very clear to WorkSafe Tasmania that there was insufficient safe systems of work to unload the pipe. As mentioned before, there was no SWIMS on site, and no pre-start had been conducted informing workers of things that could affect their health and safety on the day of the incident. During the initial WorkSafe investigation, it was also found that the slings on site were in poor condition. There was no register for slings on site, and there was no inspection regimes for those slings on site. 2 days post-incident, WorkSafe Tasmania issued an enforcement notice to Crossroads Civil relating to, with some clear direction around a SWIMS review and updating to include safe unloading of pipes, direction to recommunicate the comms to the supplier for the safe unloading of pipes. Previously, that safe unloading communication had been over the phone and there was no documented process or agreement in regards to the delivery of pipes. Toolbox safe unloading of pipes and meeting with the teams. So having those discussions for moving forward, what the process will be. Crossroads was also issued with a notice to procure documents. So that was in relation to incident investigations and all other documents relating to the incident. Post WorkSafe's initial investigation, there were formal workplace interviews conducted by the WorkSafe investigation team. So initial rectification work. So Crossroads initiated and established a steering committee, and that steering committee's focus was to review the safety management system and identify improvement. They engaged external HSE resources to support the steering committee and that review of the safety management system, and also to implement identified improvement in that management system and its application. Crossroads also developed 9 life-saving choices, and these 9 life-saving choices are based around safe work practices around the work that Crossroads do, and these 9 life-saving choices are related to what poses the greatest risk to Crossroads employees. It's about ensuring that when workers are out undertaking tasks, at front of mind, they're thinking about these high-level risks and what can happen to them in the workforce. So continuing on, so review and implementation changes for the organisational structure. So Crossroads reviewed that organisational structure to ensure that there was adequate leadership, supervision, capability. They also formalised the HSE resourcing for Crossroads Civil. They developed up a frontline safety leadership training package, which focused on fundamental leader requirements and their obligations, setting clear expectations on implementation of the management system, with a real focus on compliance and leading by example. Crossroads then developed the frontline safety toolbox, and this was focused at the workforce on the front line around employees' responsibilities to themselves and to their fellow colleagues, the fundamentals of hazard awareness and risk management. It was also focused about empowering employees to stop the job when things aren't right. Crossroads also invested in workforce safety compliance and training. So this included dogging and rigging training, confined space training, working at heights, risk management, all the things that identified by the steering committee where there could be significant improvement. So going on from that, 2 years post-incident and following the ongoing WorkSafe investigations, Crossroads received a summons to appear on a charge of failing to comply with a health and safety duty category 2 breach. So this was around section 32 on the Workplace Health and Safety Act. So at that point, Crossroads management then commenced discussions with WorkSafe Tasmania in relation to the possibility of an enforceable undertaking. So what an enforceable undertaking involves is An enforceable undertaking is an alternative to a court-imposed sanction. So for an alleged contravention of that Workplace Health and Safety Act, it's a written, legally binding commitment to implement effective workplace health and safety initiatives that deliver tangible benefit to workers, the industry, and community as a whole. It's approved and accepted by the regulator. It's an enforceable undertaking is a 5-year commitment for completion. So it's a 5-year commitment to meet those targets set out that have been reviewed and accepted by the regulator. So why choose an EU? Because it benefits the industry, the workforce, and the community. The EU is in addition to that, and the big thing here is the EU is in addition to a PCBU's commitment to their responsibilities under the Workplace Health and Safety Act to provide that safe workplace. So it's on top of all that. We need to make sure we're still doing that, and this is on top of. The other key point about an enforceable undertaking, it is definitely not a spend back into your business. It is about showing and supporting industry, workforce, and community in initiatives to keep people safe. So EU commitments. So through a communication process, and it takes time and back and forth with the regulator to gain their agreement, and making sure that what is proposed in an enforceable undertaking, EU outline, is aligns with that court imposed sanction, that if you went down the path of court, that it aligns to what that would be. As I mentioned before, it's a 5-year commitment with key targets over that 5 years. And it's not a get it across the line, stop and set. It's very heavily monitored by the regulator to ensure that the deliverables around workplace, industry, and community commitments are being met as agreed. So our commitments to the workplace for Crossroads, prior to the incident and prior, we didn't have any internal or external auditing process. So we implemented that. So Crossroads is audited against the Workplace Health and Safety Act and regulations, the codes of practice, and our internal safety management system. So the external audits every 6 months. So every 12 months. So they're offset by 6 months. So every 6 months, we're having an audit conducted on those points I mentioned before. So the audit findings from the internal and external auditors are uploaded into our Crossroads management system with actions assigned with owners, and full audits and actions and evidence for action closeout are provided to WorkSafe Tasmania as part of their monitoring of EU. For the industry, Crossroads committed to developing 3 articles for the WorkSafe Tasmania magazine, one relating to the incident and post-incident learnings, an article relating to safe unloading and deliveries on construction sites, community and road safety initiative that I'll talk about in a little bit. We also committed to developing a simulation video of the incident to be able to be shared with industry to highlight the risks involved to help prevent future incidents occurring. Crossroads also committed to developing a WorkSafe TAS presentation. So once again, presenting the incident case study, sharing the video with industry, and sharing those learning outcomes. Crossroads also committed to sponsoring a WorkSafe event, and this is about giving an opportunity to key speakers to be able to come along and share safety topics to the industry. We also committed to developing, we also committed to sponsoring 2 industry forums. So these industry forums, Crossroads is currently working with the Civil Contractors Federation to once again share incident learnings, the incident, the learnings, and the safe unloading training, as well as sharing that simulation video as well to industry to once again help prevent future occurrence of such incidents. We also committed to developing a safe unloading training. Safe unloading training, there was nothing available to the industry, so Crossroads Civil committed to working with TASTAFE to design a package for workers responsible for unloading logistics. So the focus was on safe unloading practices, so everyone goes home safe no matter what the environment. So it's not just about civil infrastructure or civil projects, it's also about logistics. The course is a 4-hour duration course, and this course can be either held on campus or it can be held in the workplace. So the topics covered are construction safety standards, load management and guidelines, task and load assessment, safe zones and load inspections, safe unloading practices, and risk management and incident reporting. So at the end of the training, the workers and those attendees gain a really good knowledge and the importance of receiving and reviewing safe work method statements for high-risk unloading procedures. Assessing load characteristics is an important one, such as weight, dimensions, the truck type, load positioning, and restraint methods, and how that load was restrained before releasing it for unloading. They're also gain a really good understanding of identifying unsafe loads, so including, once again, overloaded vehicles, load stability, and load restraint systems that aren't compliant. Understanding how to set up for removing loads, so unloading equipment, the importance of PPE, and also knowing and how to report incidents relating to unloading to WorkSafe as well as other regulatory bodies. So this training is actually targeted at that frontline workforce, the supervisors and the frontline workers, and is relevant to all businesses who receive items in the logistics industry. So as mentioned, Steph has provided that prospectus from TASTAFE. In regards to community, Crossroads is working with the Launceston City Council in regard to their road safety program. Their road safety centre in Launceston is currently undergoing refurbishment, and we're working with Crossroads has committed to working to develop a training package for school-based children on road construction simulation safety. So working to produce that so school children have a better safety understanding around being a pedestrian, a cyclist, a motorist around construction activities. So we're developing up the training package with a training provider, providing it to schools and the Launceston City Council, supporting through supply of signage, bollards, cones, so it can be set up to depict what happens outside in every normal life. So the focus there is educating the next generation on road safety from an early age, awareness of those worksite issues, and educating students on the risks associated with civil construction works and the risk of potential injury around incidents on roadwork sites. The injured person, initial injuries. So the supervisor, in the incident, he received a severe scalp laceration to the top of his head from contact from the pipes. He also received 2 fractured vertebrae. He was attended by ambulance, as mentioned. He was admitted to accident and emergency at Launceston General Hospital, and then he was released from hospital 3 days post-incident. The driver, who was pinned on the side of the truck, he was taken to accident and emergency by a family member who he called to site. He was assessed and released with minor injuries and bruising. The 2 excavator operators that were on site were provided post-incident, along with the supervisor and the driver. Post-incident were provided with employee assistance and debrief. Long-term effect. So the supervisor was incapacitated from any work for 8 months. He returned to work for us on restricted duties for a further 12 months. The supervisor's injuries resulted in a level of permanent impairment or permanent modified duties moving forward. So support, so over the course of recovery, Crossroads provided the supervisor with medical expenses, transport, rehabilitation services, travel and accommodation for appointments, home support services. There was an immense focus during the recovery for the worker and his family around engagement of the employee to make sure we had mental health support and his well-being was being supported through his journey back to work. So key takeaways. Risk management framework. It's imperative, as we know, your business must have a risk management framework that's understood at all levels of the business. Making sure an auditing process is in place to ensure that risk management framework is implemented, reviewed, and documented. It's about checking and continuous improvement of that management system. Workers empowering to stop the job. In this case, 3 workers had the ability to stop the job, maybe not felt empowered. So it's about ensuring the workforce is empowered to stop the job when things aren't right. And we need to make sure all levels of the business and management make sure that they support workers to stop the job. The other key takeaway is supplier management. Need to be very clear on engagement for delivery of procured items to sites or to a business. In this case, pre-slung loads, requirements of the load restraint guide, and also the quantity of logistics being delivered to site. It's not people need to be very clear that if it arrives on site, we're still responsible as a PCBU. So apologies once again for the technical issues at the start. The simulated incident investigation video will be made available to everyone. Please use it so you can share some key learnings with your team. When you're having logistics coming to site, please refer to that load restraint guide. There's a really good tool there that you can use to set the expectations on deliveries. The safe unloading practices training that we've developed with TasTAFE for 4-hour investment with your workforce on ensuring that they can understand and manage that risk when items come to site. There's also a contact there in relation to contact. If anyone would like to send an email to that one, they can get in contact with me.
All right. Thank you, Stewart, Cameron, for your presentation. So if anyone does have any comments or questions for our presenter today, Stewart Cameron from Crossroads Civil Contracting, for his presentation today, Construction Site Incident Case Study. And just a couple of comments that have come through, as well as thanking you for your presentation, Stewart, acknowledging that your presentation was an open and honest account. So everyone does thank you for that. And there is still the handout. If you haven't downloaded that handout, please do. And as Stewart said, the simulated video will be made available to everyone as well.
Thank you, everyone, for joining.
All right. So on that note, Stewart will begin to wrap up today's webinar. So again, thank you to our presenter, Stewart Cameron from Crossroads Civil Contracting, for his presentation, Construction Site Incident Case Study. Today's webinar has been run as part of WorkSafe Tasmania Month. WorkSafe Month is an initiative that is funded by the WorkCover Board Tasmania. Please head to worksafe.tas.gov.au to see what other webinars and in-person events we are holding throughout the month of October. Today's presentation has also been recorded. Please head to WorkSafe Tasmania's YouTube channel to rewatch, share and see what other webinars we have run so far throughout this month of October. Thank you again to our presenter. Thank you for everyone for attending, and please have a safe and healthy rest of the working day.